Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tamar Meisels. I'm a Jewish wife and mother living in Israel. And today I wanted to talk to you about Chanuka. Next week in Israel, we're going to celebrate the Jewish, very popular holiday of Chanuka. We're going to eat donuts, also known as sufganiyot. We're going to light the candles for 8 days. We're going to spin the dreidels. But why do we celebrate Chanuka? What is the reason behind Chanuka? So first, let's talk about the historical background of Chanuka. Chanuka takes place during the Second Temple. Now, the Persians enabled us to build the Second Temple. After 70 years of exile, we came and we built our Second Temple. In about 330 BCE, the Greeks, led by Alexander the Great, conquered the entire empire, the entire Persian Empire territory, including the land of Israel. And the Greek culture absorbed and dominated the surrounding cultures, forming one unified Hellenistic culture. This spread throughout the land of Israel as well. Now, perhaps slower in Israel compared to the surrounding countries, but it did influence them. The Greeks enlightened the world with science, philosophy, sports, and they had a lot to offer. And the Jews are faced with a very attractive philosophy that rivals their own. Many Jews, especially rich and noble, did succumb to the Greek lifestyle. They're known as Hellenists. But initially, the Greeks enable us religious freedom. That's when things began to take a bad turn for the Jews, when in 167 BCE, Antiochus IV pushes us a bit too hard. He takes over the temple, turns it into a pagan house of worship, and forbids us to commit commandments of the Torah, such as circumcision and Shabbos. That's when a small group of Jews, led by Matityahu HaChashmonai and his sons, start a rebellion against the Greek Empire. With tremendous heroism and talent, they're able to succeed in their rebellion. After about 2 years of war, they're able to reconquer the temple, repurify it, and that's when they find a small jug of holy oil, signed and sealed by the holy high priest, that is supposed to enough to last for 1 day, but lasts them instead for 8 days. This is the story of Chanuka. Now, what happens after this point with the Second Temple until the Roman exile in 70 BCE? That's where things began to get quite complicated. So the fighting continues several decades. The Greeks come back, they abolish their evil decrees, but the war continues. The Chashmonaim who started the war create a dynasty known as the Chashmonai dynasty. Now, this is a dynasty we're not particularly proud of. The reason for this is that Hellenism resurfaces, and the people that started the war, the Chashmonaim, their same descendants are actually become Hellenists and fight the sages and the scholars. So after this fighting the war, the Chashmonaim are able to create somewhat of an independent country that lasts us about 200 years before the Romans come in 63 BCE, and then in 70 BC destroy our temple and send us into 2,000 years of exile. Now, let's talk about some of the clashes between the Greeks and Judaism. Comedian Alan King is known for saying, "A summary of every Jewish holiday is, they tried to kill us, we won, now it's time to eat." And in Chanuka, this is actually not the case. The Greeks didn't try to kill us. Instead, this was a fight for the Jewish identity and spirituality of the Jews. Some of the key clashes, the first one we'll talk about is philosophy versus prophecy. The Greeks loved wisdom, they're philosophers. In fact, they valued the Torah and the wisdom that it brings to the world. They even translated it into Greek. What they were not willing to accept is what's above the human mind. For example, they objected to the fact that the Torah was given to us by a divine entity that wants us to commit the laws of the Torah. Also, they object to specific laws that are beyond the human rationale and mind, such as circumcision. To them, they see it as a violation of the human body. To us Jews, the Torah and the commandments are not just a regular wisdom, but a divine wisdom, and it's God's transmission and God's words to us. Another difference is beauty versus holiness. Hellenism glorified and emphasizes the physical world, the material world. The Greeks are masters at art, science, philosophy. They idealized the body, they excelled in sports and held sport competitions. Even their gods are human gods who possess human qualities. The Jews, while we do appreciate the beauty of the world and its importance, we focus more on spirituality and holiness and commitment to the spiritual world. A very important question is, we know that there's two miracles in Chanuka. There's the miracle of the war, the Hashmonai victory against the Greek, the mighty, the huge and mighty Greek Empire. And we have the miracle of the jug of oil. Now, which miracle is really more important? This depends a little bit who you ask. On one hand, the miracle of the jug of oil and the lighting of the candles are not mentioned in the book of Hashmonaim, the book of the Maccabees. Now, these books did not make it into our Holy Bible, but instead are external books, and we consider them to be historical books. Now, the miracle of jug of oil is not mentioned there at all. On the other hand, several decades later, our sages emphasize and focus on the jug of oil, barely mentioning, if at all, the wars. Some claim that the reason for this was the timing that the sages discussed Chanuka. Either it was under the unsuccessful rebellion that we held against the Romans, which led to exile, or living in diaspora, living under foreign rule. It's not the time to talk about a rebellion, a successful rebellion against a foreign entity. But no matter what, the war is a religious war. And the reason for this is that the Greeks entered Israel long before the war was started. What initiated the war was the religious, the spirituality and holiness. Therefore, both miracles, both the miracle of the war and the miracle of the jug of oil, are both about holiness and spirituality, which is what the holiday is about, both together. If we say that the war is about some independence, like I said, this is not the case. And if we say that that the miracle of Hanukkah is just about the jug of oil, we don't have a holiday for generations just because of a mitzvah that we're able to command in a miracle. We have to look at this miracle in the general context in which it takes place. What we really gain from Hanukkah is, with all the drawbacks of the Hashmonai dynasty that we mentioned and many more that we didn't mention, their victories had much value. They were able to create an independent state for, like we said, over 200 years. In this time, Israel became the national and spiritual center of the people in Israel. In those days, the foundation for the oral Torah was laid. Now, the oral Torah helped us maintain our faith in a way that's not focused on the temple, and it's in fact not even focused on being in the land of Israel. This helped us survive those 2,000 years of exile, very difficult exile. To summarize, Hanukkah is a spiritual, religious holiday, and it enabled us to keep our faith for 2,000 dark years. Thank you.